It's good to speak with you today, Nick. And today I'm looking forward to hearing your views on facing up to the talent crisis in supply chain. Can you start by providing a brief background of yourself?
Yes, certainly, Dustin. Hello, and it's a pleasure to talk with you. I started my career some long time ago now by getting a scholarship in supply management to go to university, and then was guaranteed a job with British Rail, where I worked for about 15 years in various different supply management and supply chain management roles. And then I moved to the British Post Office and spent another 12 years there. In both those organizations, had a passion about developing people. And the way I used to look at things was I always wanted to make sure there was somebody ready to take over my job from me. That meant that I wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to improve themselves, and I wanted to try and develop people from within rather than have to recruit on the open market, because that way I could then be sure that I would get people who knew the business that we were operating in. And it was a very interesting progression, because they were large companies and lots of opportunity for people to move around. So I was able to choose from a fairly large pool of people within the organization. And then I came to Michigan State University about 19 years ago, originally for a year on loan, still here, and I now work in executive development programs where I help company clients do exactly the same as what I used to by developing their talent as well.
That's interesting. Can you talk about where can new talent come from?
Yeah, certainly. I think the most important area for new talent is going to be with the recruits that we get in at a fairly young and tender age out of university programs. Those are the people who are going to be the future leaders for supply chain going forward. And with the very large proportion of baby boomers who are retiring in the next few years, I've read some projections that say millennial generation people will be 60% of the workforce in about 10 years' time, which is quite amazing. So where do you get those people from? How do they think? How do they behave? It is important to people who are hiring new talent. They can come from university programs, and there are a lot of universities now that offer supply chain management degrees of one form or another. It seems to be a very subject, and we all know the reasons why that is. The difficulty that we face is that supply chain itself doesn't have a particularly good name. It's not particularly well understood by people who aren't in it. As supply chain managers, we often only get our voice heard when we're helping put things right after a natural disaster or some other problem that has occurred. And yet, every day, we are bending over backwards to make sure that supplies get where they are needed, when they're needed, in the quantity and quality that are needed, and so forth. So to be able to do that, we've got to get people aware of supply chain management as a potential career. That's one of the biggest difficulties we've got at the moment. Why do people enter university with an idea of doing supply chain? Well, I'm not so sure that they do. A few might. A few that have family in supply chain jobs are so excited by that fact and what they hear from their relatives that they want to get into it as well. But a lot of students taking supply chain majors have got there because during the course of their university career, they've been influenced by a professor or by their peer group to the fact that supply chain is an exciting and a very fulfilling career choice. It really comes about from is, and a great example I've seen is a couple of university students, not necessarily from my university, but from a survey that I did a few years ago. They reported that they'd originally wanted to do a finance degree or a marketing degree, But when it came to doing the internships, they didn't get the chance to understand everything there was to learn about a company, whereas some of their friends who did supply chain internships had a real opportunity to be able to get involved with many different areas of work. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity that we don't, as supply chain managers, sell very well to potential recruits. So we really ought to get out there and make sure that as a profession, we're telling people that the opportunity exists. It's a great opportunity. It's got the chance to earn some really good money. And part of the reason for that being the case is the fact that demand far exceeds supply. And everybody who's done Economics 101 knows that when demand exceeds supply, the price only goes in one direction, and that's upwards. And that's what we're seeing with salaries. We're also seeing that there are constraints to the supply chain for future talent. And it is very interesting to think of talent as a supply chain problem. One of the constraints is getting people that really have a good, broad understanding of what supply chain's about. Very easy to teach people a lot of the tools and techniques, not very easy to teach them how to put it into practice. A lot of companies are looking for people coming out of university programs with a good range of soft skills as well. The ability to solve problems in teams, the ability to look for root causes, the ability to question things to understand what has happened, and to be able to communicate very well in verbal communication and whatever form of written communication we might be facing today and in the future. Not all university programs are able to teach that sort of thing particularly effectively. Many universities now put their MBA students through teamwork exercises and address real problems that way, or they address case studies as teams. Those are all good opportunities, but nothing beats the chance to get out on an internship, do some real work, not just busy work, and get to experience the day-to-day life in an organization and be able to help address some of the issues that there are. So I think we've got a duty to those of us that are following to be able to give them those sort of experiences. The millennial generation particularly looks to professionals to be their mentors for the future. It's becoming a more and more important part of them entering the workforce. They don't want to just be sat in a desk and told what to do. They want to have somebody who's going to help them learn as well and create the right sort of environment. Send them on courses to learn additional things that they don't particularly know, and really to help them into their career, because these folks want to advance fairly quickly. And if they're not given the chance to advance, then we have a problem, because they're going to go and look elsewhere. They're going to go and look where their peer group has had success. And everybody's needing talent in supply chain management, so we've got to make sure that we can satisfy some of the demands of those younger folk.
And can you talk a little bit more about how do you help them find mentors and develop their skills?
Yeah, I look back at my own experience. I was very lucky when I joined my first organization, the railway. We were given a mentor from day one. I had a gentleman who had about 45 years of experience working in the supply management function for the railway. And he basically said to me, I want to make sure that you get the chance to get on, so my door is always open if you ever have come in and talk to me. He had tremendous experience. He was very willing to share. What we've got to do is, I think we've all got a role to play. To be a mentor, to be a coach to people. However, we've got to overcome one thing. We've got to overcome the fear that they're going to take our job. That's not really the case, because we should always be preparing ourselves to move upwards as well. There'll come a time when, yes, everybody reaches as far as they can go in the organization, and the pyramid gets smaller the further you go up. So we're not all going to get to the top. But certainly there's plenty of room for people to move into different jobs. And one of the things I always suggest to people is you can be a good mentor only if you fully understand the organization you're working in. And in a larger company, that's easy to do by being prepared to move around. The younger folks are very much prepared to move around as well. Some of the best programs that I've seen are mentored rotational programs where people spend 6 months in one part, move on to a totally different part, and often a totally different geography as well. Nice and easy to do in large organizations, not so easy in smaller organizations. But in a small company, you can get to understand a lot more about the business itself very quickly and really become a key part of that business if you're someone who comes up with good ideas, comes up with ideas that are well thought through and able to implement them as well. And I would suggest that part of mentoring is encouraging people to think outside their normal area of experience, their normal area of day-to-day working. The old sort of think outside the box idea. Try and make time to sit down with people and ask them questions that will stretch their imagination and get them to apply some of their experience and some of their learning in a totally different field as well. That has benefits not just for the individual but for the organization as well.
And do you have any recommendations for companies that will be interested in developing these internship programs or becoming mentors?
Yeah, there are a couple of good examples that exist. Looking outside supply chain is probably the best way to do it at the moment, because these things are only very young in supply chain other than a few companies. Look what's been done in other functions, finance or marketing or sales even, and say, how can we apply that to supply chain? There's plenty of opportunity in supply chain now with the breadth of supply chain, everything from procurement, product development, through the production, manufacturing, service planning, through to the actual operations of the business, and then the logistics, distribution, and customer service functions. So moving around within those functions is very, very easy when they're all brought together under supply chain management. But I would certainly say don't encourage people to be a total in-depth specialist in any one area alone. They've got to get the opportunity to become what the HR people call a T-shaped person. And by a T-shaped person, that means somebody who's got a breadth of knowledge across the whole of the organization and the different functions that there are. Plus, they have the ability to drill down deeply in at least one area. And that'll help people as they plan their career and they progress to be able to move into other areas but have some sort of skill and benefit that they can bring to addressing questions that are related but not necessarily exactly the same as the function that they've worked in the past. And then for the internship programs, what you've really got to do as an employer is avoid the easy internship planning, and that means that you've got to actually come up with challenges to these people. And one of the best ways that I found to do that is to set them meaningful projects, a project that has some sort of return on the investment that you're making in them by coming up with some impact, whether it's financial or not, doesn't really make much difference. It's better if it can be financial because they get the opportunity then to work out a good ROI on what they're doing. But it's got to be something that has some air of opportunity. It's also got to be a real issue that the company faces. And I found that the best issues are the ones that encourage people to talk across as many functions as possible and also outside the company towards your suppliers and towards your customers as well.
And thank you, Nick, for sharing your views today on facing up to the talent crisis in supply chain.
Okay, Dustin, you're very welcome. Thank you.